In a world where the truth is often filtered through the lens of those in power,
But we are concerned about the trouble and trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
the Next Generation Action Network has made a critical investment to shift the narrative. We've built a digital platform designed not just to inform, but to inspire, mobilize, and empower. For too long, mass media has failed our communities, controlled by the same forces that oppress us. That's why NGAN is creating and delivering content directly to the people. No filters, no middlemen, just the raw truth from the front lines of the From live streaming press conferences to broadcasting panels and releasing powerful video content, we're bringing our message straight to the people who need to hear it the most. This platform is more than just a tool. It's how we document history in real time and how we tell our stories with our voices and how we reclaim the narrative. But we can't do this alone. We need your continued support to grow this platform and to keep the movement alive online and in the streets. This is NGAN Digital. This is People Power in Action. Share, subscribe, stay informed, stay engaged, because this revolution will be televised.
Hello, I'm Minister Dominique Alexander, president and founder of the Next Generation Action Network, and I'm here today with Congressman Collin Allred, who is currently running for congressional district, the 33rd congressional district here in Texas, which, if you all know, that he represented the 32nd congressional district in Congress before, because of the Republican agenda that forced redistricting here in the state of Texas. That number changed, and of course we know the whole story of how we got here with redistricting. But Colin is running for the 33rd congressional district. Right now we are currently in a runoff, and that election is May 26th. And of course, I just wanted to sit down with him today to be able to make sure that the voters know what his agenda. This is no stranger to this district, to this community. He has fought in our community, and of course, I just want to make sure that the people really know what his commitment, his values, and why he's running for Texas congressional district again in this May runoff election. Of course, we know that that he's running against Julie Johnson, of course, who was the current incumbent of the 32nd. Of course, there is no incumbent right now in the 33rd or whatever, and I'm trying to make sure that I use the correct grammar in this process. But I want to make sure, Colin, for some people that don't know who you are, reintroduce yourself to some. Introduce yourself to many. And of course, what we saw in this past election is a lot of new voters to this midterm election. And for some people that might want to come back out, we know we saw across the country an uptick of voting at unprecedented levels in all different states.
That's true.
And we don't know what we're going to get, from this runoff election, because in this past year, we haven't been able to use a lot of data to show us, because, of course, people have been showing up in a major way.
Yes.
For many people, tell us why you're running for Congress right now.
Yeah, thank you, Dominic. I appreciate you for having me. I'm also glad because, we're both Dallas ISD guys. You went to Maceo Smith, I went to Hillcrest. My mom taught in DISD for 27 years.
Yes.
And I'm really proud of what you've done.
Thank you.
And I think the Action Network is just doing great work in our community, and we need it.
Yeah.
Right. Before I ever ran for office, when I finished my football career, I became a civil rights lawyer.
Yeah.
And I chose voting rights specifically because there was a line in a Supreme Court case that spoke to me that said the right to vote was preservative of other rights.
Yes.
Right. So everything that we care about, ultimately, we want to protect it at the ballot box. Right. Mm-hmm. We want to get people elected in positions where they can pass laws for that. We want to pass bond measures. in our community. DISD has a bond measure coming up, right? All these things depend on being able to interact with your democracy.
Right.
But we have a history in our state of making it incredibly difficult for folks to vote. And that bothered me. Like, as an athlete, I think it bothered me because I feel I had an ingrained sense of fairness. And I think it's unfair, right? You win some, you lose some, but you don't try and make it so the other side can't play in the game, particularly the most vulnerable people.
Correct.
And, I served for 6 years in Congress at a time, we went through a pandemic, through an insurrection, some crazy times. But to me, this is the most dangerous time, certainly in my lifetime, I think in really modern American history. I won't say this is the worst time in our history, because if you're a student of the civil rights movement and where we've been, you know that we have many more tools than John Lewis did when he walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge at 25 years old, right? Right. But there's something heartbreaking and upsetting about seeing hard-won progress be pulled back. And that's what I see happening. Yeah. And I see us abandoning commitments that we've made to diversity, right? Abandoning commitments that we've made to building a more perfect union where everyone is welcome. Yeah. And taking on a role that around the world, we are seen as the bad guys. Yeah. And I think here in North Texas and in Dallas, we should be clear. This district shouldn't exist. Yeah. It's a racial gerrymander. That's not our opinion. Right. The court said that. Yes. Right? They said that this is a racial gerrymander that violates the Constitution. Right. But the Supreme Court thought, well, for this election, we're going to keep it in place. And so we have fewer districts that we have where a Democrat will be able to win. In Dallas, we went from having 3, the 32nd, the 30th, which was EBJ, and Jasmine, the 33rd, which was Mark Vesey, to now just 2, the 33rd and the 30th. And so to me, we have to have our best players on the field. We have to have our strongest voices in these seats. So I'll go back into the Congress, wanting to tackle what I know we have to do underneath all of this, which is that working people and folks who are living the way I grew up feel like they can't get ahead. But then we have to also put in place some massive, massive changes and reforms. We had a lot of things come out of Watergate after Nixon left. Yes. That we passed laws to try and make sure that something like that couldn't happen again. Yes. We're gonna have to do that times 10 after Trump and during Trump, right, to stop what I think he's gonna try and do these last 2 years. So I'm as fired up as I've ever been about public service. I don't think it's about me, and I never have. But I think this is a time where we have to put voices in place that'll stand up to this, but also have an idea of what we can do to fix it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad that you said that context, because I believe it's very important in this current climate that we live in to be able to make sure people are educated, right? This is not the worst we've been, but history, the thing that they try to come after, our books, our history, what our ancestors and so many people who fought and lived before us, right? They try to suppress that information, and it's important in this current climate to actually say, hey, this is not the worst, but history tells us if we do not stand up to this moment, we can know what can be, we can reap in that moment, right? And so the reality is I always tell, like my grandmother used to always say, there's nothing new under the sun, right? That's right. And so the reality is that they're not doing anything new. It's the same approach. It's the same thing, but our ancestors and the people who fought for the Voting Rights Act or the Civil Rights Act or all of these things that we have seen in this last year and a half go under attack, even the for housing. That's right. Things that of course, even in your experience, you fought very hard to even protect is at stake. And of course, history tells us why and the reason. And I know that people have saw in this last year and a half, and people keep on saying Project 2025, Project 2025, and all of that. And I always tell people all the time, man, you really need to read that thing, right? You need to really understand, because these individuals have set back in and read and studied what has made progress for so many different minority groups in this country, and they are after it.
Yeah,
you
they
know,
want to unravel the whole thing.
Yeah,
That's
they
right.
want to unravel everything that addresses the social economic element of our communities and the diversity and the beautifulness of our district, and of course, even what you see what they're doing with this gerrymandered district that we now have to, make sure that we have representation of,
That's
right? But as you see this, it's important that we have real, true fighters in Congress that also not only understands the current fight, but also know where we've came from in the midst of it. When you see the stuff that's currently going on and Trump, basically calling for this Save America Act and all of this stuff that's currently going on, man. How did it make you feel,
It's funny because it's not funny, but over a decade ago, when I first started getting into voting rights, some of the stuff that we talked about that was kind of like the far out ideas of what they might try and do, like, it'd be crazy if they tried and did this, is what they are actually doing now, right? It's come from kind of like the reaches of the internet into real life.
Yes.
Right. And the president just issued an executive order trying to end mail-in voting, even though he just voted by mail in this most recent election in Florida. And the president has no ability to do that. Folks should know voting laws are set by the Congress and state legislatures. They're interpreted by the courts. The president's only job is to see that the laws are faithfully executed.
Right.
Right. But this is the same guy who last time he oversaw an election when he was in power tried to overturn that election on January 6th.
Right.
He doesn't believe in democracy. He doesn't believe in voting, even though he just won an election. You might think he would come out of that feeling better about it.
And we didn't do an insurrection.
We didn't insurrection.
We didn't act
we certified the results. That's right.
We may have been sad a little bit.
Yep.
It may took us a little minute.
That's right.
But we respected it.
We respected it. We peacefully had a peaceful transfer of power. But folks should know the SAVE Act is incredibly dangerous.
Yes.
And I want to break it down for people. Because I'll see someone like Stephen A. Smith say, well, you should have to have an ID. You got to have an ID for everything. There's a difference between a privilege and a right.
Yes, correct.
If you want to fly on a plane, that's a privilege, and you need an ID to fly on a plane. Voting is a right, which is different. And also the way that right is applied is different because in our state, for example, with our voter ID law, you can't use an expired ID. Let's say you're a senior citizen, you like to vote in person, but you don't drive anymore, so you don't have your ID is old. You can't use that. You can't use your DISD ID or an ID from one of our Dallas colleges, right? You have to use certain ones. But this SAVE Act is really pernicious because what they're saying is you have to prove your citizenship to register to vote.
Right.
And proving citizenship might seem easy.
Yes.
But there's only a couple ways to do it. And we had to do it back in 2014 when they passed the voter ID law here in Texas because I had to go around helping folks get IDs. But in Texas, to do that, you have to have a proof of citizenship.
Right.
And so what is it? Okay, it's a birth certificate, right? It's a passport, but of course, if you have a passport, you can always just use that as your ID, right? But it's mostly a birth certificate. And most people don't have their birth certificate on them.
Right.
So they oftentimes have to get a new one from the Department of Health and Human Services. And it costs about $25.
Right.
And you have to take off work. You have to go down there and fill a bunch of paperwork out. For a working person, it's a huge hurdle, right? So this is a poll tax.
Yeah, and if you're 65 years and older, and you were in some kind of rural area of America, you might not even really
record
have
of birth
your record.
might be in a Bible. It might be the family Bible.
Correct.
Right? They might have wrote it down, in a book that's going to be passed through the family, right? And we actually came across people like this.
Correct.
But then also there are folks who've had different status changes, right? You might have gotten married and your name changed, and now you have to get the paperwork to prove that when you go to get your birth certificate, because the birth certificate name is different from the current name that you go by. There's all kinds of things that happen in life, right?
And it would also cause, one of the things I've been explaining to people, like what we went through in Dallas County elections a day, it also causes major confusion.
You're so right.
Because then now our elections departments don't have the infrastructure to
Yes.
verify this type of information.
don't.
Right?
And they're not going to get extra funding to do it.
Correct. You know what I mean? So it's not like
Right.
they're going to
Yeah.
help
Yeah.
you
No.
be able
No.
to say, oh, this is this extra hurdle.
That's right.
So a person who is hired for voting machines and blah, 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 now you're asking them to do basically FBI
Right.
level
Yes.
background checks on people.
And also just, you're so right about the confusion point, because I used to always say that a new law was sometimes worse than a bad law. When you change something, then it just throws everything into chaos.
Correct.
People are used to certain things, right? In this last election we had, the issue was that most people are just used to being able to vote a certain way, and they've been doing it for the last decade.
Correct.
And all of a sudden, it's just different.
It just changed.
You know, and so is the law bad? Yes. But the worst thing about it was that it was new.
Correct.
And in this case, the implementation would be a disaster.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
just know that.
And we always know when
Yeah.
when you pass laws, there's this phase of implementation.
Yeah.
And it's also interpretation,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when you go through the state of Texas, you got local counties,
Yep, 254 of them.
election department directors that all have their areas of
Some of them are not
interpretation.
as into to helping people.
And
Yeah.
so it's not just, sometimes, being here in Dallas County, we have the luxury of so many different things that
Yeah.
other counties, like I always tell people all the time, think about Smith County or that black and brown voter
Yep.
that will be disfranchised
right.
by these type of things
That's right.
that don't care. I get calls all the time from people in red counties
Yes.
where they have literally just took them off the road.
That's
I
right.
had a teacher tell me I'm in Longview and they just took me off the road,
Mm-hmm.
literally and if I wasn't from Dallas County knowing about it and being aware, I wouldn't even checked and they would have gotten away with it and I wouldn't have been able to vote, right?
That's right.
And so the part is this is the only tactic that he sees to remain
Yes.
in power.
That's right.
By suppressing the mass amount of voters.
Yeah.
And the part is one of the things that they were able to accomplish in this election day is they realized if we do these last minute rules, it will create mass confusion, and then it makes it harder for us to amplify to ensure that the people know about it. Because I was telling somebody, it was like, well, why didn't people do a better job marketing and telling this? And I'm like, listen, everybody told everybody in Dallas County
Yes.
early vote.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Vote
But
now.
people still
Yes.
are set in their ways.
Yeah.
I have an aunt that does not believe in early voting.
Yep.
She is an
That's right.
election day
You're gonna vote
voter,
election day.
and I
Yeah,
tried to get her there,
Yeah.
and it took her about an hour to go on and vote on election
Uh-huh.
day. She said, "Son, I might as well had a went on the early vote."
you
And I
might
said,
have,
"I told you."
Yeah, I was trying to tell you. Yeah.
But it's some of those traditional people,
Yeah.
and even young people that were taught
Yes.
by a lot of traditional folks in voting that are used to just going on election day.
It's
right?
amazing to see it. I've always, every election I've ever worked, you see the people come out, and that's just the day that they're going to vote. Right?
Correct.
But the other thing I always worry about, and I think you do too, is those first-time folks who get excited.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, I'm going to go vote.
Yes.
And they, for whatever reason it is, I think there's obvious reasons now why. But in every election I've seen them, they'll be coming to the polling place and they're excited. Like, I'm here to vote. You know what I'm saying? And they've got they looked it up, they got their ID, they think they got everything checked off, right? And they go into that polling place and somebody turns them away.
Yeah. Right.
And you kind of see the disappointment just come out. All that excitement just drains out of them.
Right.
And many times that person does not become a voter then. Right. And then we don't get them back.
Correct.
And that, to me, I always think about in Texas that we're not just running against the Republicans. We're running against kind of the cynicism and the earned belief that nothing will change, right? And so it's like, well, why should I, I'm just going to give up on this. It's not for me, right? And yes, it is, but that's what they want us to think, It's exactly what they want. And I think that's what the president wants, what Trump wants with these things that he's doing. He knows they'll probably be overturned, but he's hoping he'll confuse enough people, frustrate enough people, maybe make it seem like it just isn't for them, so they won't get involved.
Yeah. He's going to continue to push the buck forward, right? And ensure that even if it gets overturned in 6-9 months or a year, between that time, the damage is done, right? And in areas where those people are going to be adherent to that, they're going to be able to get away with a lot in damage. And before you have higher courts or the Supreme Court actually reverse something, you basically, the damage is done.
Damage done. There's going to be people who are going to try to implement this right now, right?
I'm glad you brought that up. So it's a perfect segue into my next question. Is we've saw the unprecedented attack on the judiciary.
Yeah.
At every different levels from this administration.
Yeah.
What do you think is some of the things that can ensure that we go forward? You might have an answer, because I always tell people all the time, this is, a lot of times kitchen table talk. How can we not get ourselves back into this type of stare where the judiciary becomes a political pawn,
right?
As it is, where this man believes, I remember in government class, I was taught these things they will call co-equal branches, but some kind of way, in his mind, the executive branch is up there and it's not co-equal, right? And so as you
he doesn't
see
know what
these,
co-equal means.
I don't think he knows what that means at all. So, but as you see the judiciary being under attack, just like today, I just seeing on the news where Trump is going to be the first sitting president.
He went to the Supreme Court.
Went to the Supreme Court.
He thinks he's going to intimidate them by sitting there.
Literally, this is beyond. And you normally would not.
It's so crazy, brother. Because the funny thing also is, oral arguments in Supreme Court are a little bit for show.
Yeah,
it's mostly the briefs that are written. Most of them already made up their minds what they're going to do. They're just going to tease some things out while they're there. So he thinks he's going to show up at the oral argument and have an impact. He's not. But whatever. But you're absolutely right. This idea that nothing matters except what one person wants to do.
Correct.
And there's no check on him.
No.
And we've seen this administration ignore court orders openly. They say, don't deport this person. They deport them. They say, oh, well, they're already on the plane. Right. Or they say, bring them back from El Salvador. You shouldn't have sent somebody there. That's against our laws. There was no due process applied here. They say, oh, well, we can't get them back. They're in El Salvador.
Right.
We've never actually, at least in certainly my lifetime, seen anything like this. And so I do think that we have to all get back to sort of our basic government lessons that we learned.
Right.
That these structures were put in place for a reason.
Correct.
And that it's not just like, for the eggheads and the people who, you feel like they're talking down to you, but that we have certain procedures so that everybody should be treated the same. Now, you and I both know, I was a civil rights lawyer, that wasn't always the case.
Correct.
But we were at least trying to pursue that. But the one thing I also think is that we have to move, and this is part of why I ran for office instead of continuing my civil rights practice, we have to move past depending on the courts to be our defenders of our rights. You and I went to integrated schools. Right. That was a court ruling, Brown v. Board, right? And there was, so many rulings that guaranteed our rights to interracial marriage. Loving v. Virginia. There's rulings, around affirmative action and why that's necessary, right? All these rulings that, in about a 20-year span, set up many of the civil rights protections that we have.
Correct.
And they've been taken away. And so now we have to take what were rulings and make them into laws. Correct. Right? And the Civil Rights Act has been chipped away at. The Voting Rights Act is basically dead. Okay, well, you know what they say when a king dies? They say the king is dead, long live the king, the next king comes. Okay, the Voting Rights Act is dead, long live the Voting Rights Act. Let's get the next one. You know what I mean? Let's bring in the next one and let's make it even stronger. And that to me is what my vision for kind of post-Trumpism is. Correct. Is that we are no longer dependent on the whims of a judge or the makeup of the Supreme Court for our rights. Right. But that we're going to go out there and affirmatively pass laws and put down in statutes that this is where we know we need to be. And if they want to overturn some of it, we'll have fights. But we're gonna have a new era of legislating that we haven't had, in 60, 70 years. And I think Trump has proven that we have to do that, And I think so. I agree that we have to protect our system, including respect for the courts. But as someone who practiced in front of some of these courts, I also feel like they will not be our defenders anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So for many voters and people who are going to participate in this coming runoff election, what are one or two things that you would want somebody to know about you?
Yeah. I mean, I really think that what we're going through, that Trump got elected because he told people he's going to make groceries cheaper.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Let's be
that's
real.
a lie. Let's be real.
Correct.
That's a lie.
Yeah.
But I remember I was going around talking to people and they'd be like, well, at least maybe he'll bring back the economy that he had before COVID, right? They kind of thought that was going to be the case. And he was talking about lowering costs. The whole thing was a lie. I had a coach who used to say, he wouldn't spit on you if you were on fire, right? Like he wouldn't stop to help you under any circumstances, man would not. And he's not cared about working people his entire life. He's been screwing working people over. But I do think the Democratic Party has for far too long become too associated with elitism.
You're correct.
Right? With, also just kind of being led around by some set of ideas cooked up in, these elite universities and being talked about among people who with white collar jobs and who are almost in some cases saying, well, this is what we can give to working people. No.
Yeah.
That working people don't want to be given anything.
Correct.
They want to have a chance to earn it for themselves. That's how we grew up.
Correct.
Right? When you grow up like I did, being raised by a single mother, you don't believe that someone's going to give you everything. If someone offered it, you'd say, "What's the catch?"
Yeah.
Right. Where's the catch? And so I think what I want people to know in this runoff is that I know exactly what people are going through, and I know what we can do to actually give them a chance.
Yeah.
Right. Then I think it's going to be on them to take advantage of that chance. But I guarantee a lot of people will. Right. And to me, there's a few fundamental building blocks that we have to get right. Healthcare. We have the highest uninsured rate in the country. We're sitting in a county with 20% or more of our fellow Dallas County residents are uninsured. This is outrageous. It's dangerous. It's unproductive. Whatever words you want to use, it has to end. Right? We have to expand healthcare to everyone. Right? Childcare is a massive, massive deal. My wife and I have a 5 and 7-year-old, and our experience is different from other people's experience, of course. But I know that throughout COVID, a lot of our child care centers closed down. A lot of people haven't come back into that industry. And so if you have a young kid right now, it's expensive.
There.
And it's a huge concern for working families because folks are like, listen, I don't want to leave my precious baby with just anybody.
Yeah.
Right. But they're having to.
Yeah.
And they're doing it at a huge percentage of what they earn. We need to lower that and make sure everyone has access to child care. Having access to a quality public education has never been more important, and it's never been more under attack.
Yeah.
You and I are both public school kids.
Man.
We apparently did well enough.
Yeah.
But they are doing everything they can in our state and at the federal level. There is no Department of Education anymore.
No.
Right? And what did it do? It helped vulnerable kids, basically. Its role was Head Start.
I'm so glad you brought that
yeah,
up.
I mean, like it was helping, to try and increase diversity in teachers. We need more black men teaching. We have all these things we need, and then I think it's training and access to the economy of the future, right? And so that you can compete in this economy that is going to be impacted by AI, that is going to have things changing. Our kids have to come out ready to deal with that, so they can pursue their dreams. And I have plans for how we can do all of these things. And I would throw in there, lastly, just home ownership and the ability to purchase a home. Because I talk to so many young people who tell me, that buying a house is not on the horizon for them, right?
Right.
And the average age of a first-time home buyer in the United States just hit 40. That is unbelievable. Just 20 years ago, it was, I think, 9 years younger than that. And before that, you go back and it was in the 20s, right?
Right.
So we're putting home ownership outside of the reach of most of our young people.
Right.
And so they can't start building wealth.
Yeah.
They can't start, generating, interest instead of just having to live on this treadmill of renting. And that has all these knock-on effects. That's why people are putting off having kids, putting off getting married, putting off being able to retire. It all pushes everything further into the future. And in the meantime, they're running up credit card debt. And there's all these things that are coming along with it. And so access to affordable housing and the ability to purchase a house is so important. I've got my own personal stories around that as well. But all these things are things that I've worked on, but we can actually do. These are not pie in the sky things.
Mm-hmm.
This is not saying that we're going to give you everything, but we can, through smart legislation, put these things in place. And to me, if we do that, folks will take advantage of it, and you'll be surprised at how good they can do.
Man, I'm glad that you hit a lot of those areas, because that's one of the areas that we talk about. How can we reimagine how we address the socioeconomic element of our communities? And of course, as an organization that is focused on the next generation, how do we educate people to understand, hey man, you renting and realizing that you're literally, you probably paying less on that mortgage than actually paying in that rent, and just bringing the education of it up, or, you know, just even the segue of being able to educate people on healthcare and what's currently being robbed of them, right? Of course, we know that the Texas Republicans have researched their line again. You know, I always say it's quite funny every time it's election time. Greg Abbott comes out with, we're going to cut property tax, and when it gets to when it gets to the election time, it's like, you know, when it gets to session, it's like none of them can agree on anything, right? And so I'm like, I'm used to that line, cut property tax.
That property tax goes up every year.
And so then when they get down there and they realize, oh, wait a minute, we really can't actually do this, or the only way that they find a way to cut certain things is when they start cutting public education, right?
Of our most vulnerable.
And ensuring, and we already know that Texas is ranked the lowest in the country in regards to per school allocation, per student allocation, and the list goes on, right? And it's really a travesty to actually watch it, to see it, and all that type of stuff or whatever. So it's real good to have somebody that's in Congress that understands that language and what's going on and the behind the scenes of it or whatever. So it's real good to get prepared for that, and especially the fight that is currently about to be had. We hope that, you know, we able to get a new leadership to take over this House. Because we feel like that's the only way that we're going to be able to have some type of checks and balances to the last 2 years of this, you know, this current administration. You know, I try not to say his name, you know what I mean? And me personally, I hate to use the dignifier of the first part of the name or whatever and stuff like that.
Love to say it too.
I just can't make myself, you know, say it. I won't call him the actual name that I have for him, just for the respect of you, and I don't want nobody to blame you later on. Be like, you was on the interview with somebody.
We don't have the minister out here saying what he really thinks.
And he called him this, you know. But my pastor always say 46 minus 1 and you know 44 plus 2. You know what I mean? Like we use some languages. We never just try to say the name, because the name actually brings anxiety. You know what I mean? Because when you are in this civil rights fight, in this fight that we're currently going, I see so many vulnerable communities, especially with stuff in immigration. And
it's unbelievable.
Oh man, it's unbelievable to see families that literally lives have altered. Families that not leaving their home. They won't even take their kids to school.
That's right.
Won't go to jobs. Won't. In the unchecked balance that ICE has done, and the fact that we have tripled the budget, in the fact that, you know, just the moral arc of where, like I would say, when we found this organization in 2014, we felt like we made some heavy progress in regards to police relations, and we got a lot left to do, but what ICE...
You served on the oversight board, right?
And now what ICE has really done is re-triggered that in a major way, to where even American law enforcement don't know what to do in this manner, and they're having to do with this is terrorizing people. This is terrorizing, and you then, if you're a local police department, you don't want to say nothing, because then you don't want your federal dollars being threatened, or your local community, and then you have in one sense where you have, your citizens demanding you, but then your local city, like the city of Dallas, gets more than 300 to 400 million in federal dollars, right? And that he's hanging that over the head
time.
like a carrot, right?
That's right.
You know what I mean? And so, and you're trying to keep your economy at the same time, trying to make sure that your citizens is protected, right? And even for us as an organization, we know the complication.
Yeah.
And that's why, as organizers, it has had us having to sit at the table with our elected officials in a different capacity. Like, hey, listen, how do we sit down to really get through this? How do we educate our people without it becoming on the 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock news, where they just want to get the headline out, but that headline might not protect this family.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, and so organizers have had to find themselves in a different kind of capacity.
I bet.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In this work or whatever.
And I do want to shout out the Dallas Police Chief for rejecting the federal funding that they offered to then cooperate fully with ICE.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that was money that the Dallas Police Department could use.
Yeah.
But it came with these evil strings attached to it. Right. And so I want to shout him out and say I appreciate that stand he took there. I also think that we should be clear that ICE is a federal agency. It should be overseen by the Congress. There's been no oversight from the Congress.
Correct.
This is like any other agency.
Correct.
Right? Haul their butts in there. Put them in those seats. Yell at them. Get answers. Conduct investigations. Request documents.
Yeah.
Put that information out to the people. Make sure they understand what happened when Renee Good was killed. What happened when the nurse who worked at the VA was killed? What's happening in South Texas when they are targeting and raiding Latino businesses?
Yeah.
And they're sweeping up American citizens at the same time. Right? Like that, we have to do these things. Right? And I am, because I believe that, as you do, that law enforcement requires a trust to be established between the police and the officers that we empower on our behalf to protect our communities. We're paying their salaries and we're empowering them on our behalf to keep us safe. And then also between them and the community to trust that they're there for those reasons. And you and I both know good officers who are trying to do that. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And these people make their jobs impossible. Right. Because now what you see when ICE does these activities is people are less likely to report crimes, domestic violence, breaking and entering, because they think, what if ICE shows up?
What if?
Right?
Yeah.
And so you have less cooperation with the police when crimes do take place. I mean, you're making a less safe community as a whole. And that's before we even get to the fact that much of the treatment of migrants in this country under this administration is directly unconstitutional. Right. Like directly. We have laws in our Constitution requiring due process, requiring certain steps to be adhered to, not because of who they are, but because of who we are. It has nothing to do with them. It wouldn't matter if they had, committed crimes, whatever. Our system actually says, we don't care who you are. We as a society have decided we're gonna treat people a certain way. Right. And when we don't do that, we lose something much more fundamental than, the issues of the day. We're losing our soul. And to me, that's what this entire fight with ICE and immigration is about. It's about the soul of the country and who we actually are. Right. And John Lewis, who I served with, who was a friend of mine, he came to Dallas and campaigned with me. He used to always say, if you see something that's not right, that's wrong, stand up, say something, do something, get in some good trouble. Yeah. Right. And I know you do that. You adhere to that. And we have to combine that with the electoral power in this next election to hold them accountable. Right? Yeah. The most I can offer folks is that in the last 2 years of the Trump presidency, I'm going to be like a terrier after these people. Yeah. Right. That that if you have broken the law in our state, in our country, in our community, you're going to have somebody on your tail. Right. Because to me, the only way to restore trust is going to be to have a complete overhaul, but that's going to have to wait until we get a different president. Right. But in the meantime, we can at least have some sunlight and some transparency. Yeah,
and I'm glad that you said that, because I think that one of the things that the American voter really want is really people really standing up for that. And also, you know, not taking forever and 4 or 5, 10 years to get something done that is clear, evident of it, right? And we wait till election cycles, and then we want to go to the American people like, oh, that's an enemy. Well, it took you 4 years to, you know what I mean? Like, it took you 4 years to get to the part, and like now we're here, and now this person it's kind of like, you know, that conversation about, hey, you know, this 4 years of presidency, and we didn't get an indictment or anything about the last year, and it was like, okay, you know, we can go in the neighborhood or the south side of Chicago, and Lil Ray, you
they're not getting 3 years.
It don't take 3 years, right? And so it's like, okay, we need to see some real results to addressing these issues, and that's the only way that we're going to be able to get the facts to educate the people on what the level. I can only imagine. I'm pretty sure you know, even the first term of all of the stuff, we had pretty much everybody that served with this man literally say this man should never be president.
That's right.
And I can only imagine.
His whole cabinet is against his whole first cabinet is against everything he's doing second.
For real. Like, and I can only imagine what he's doing now, right? And it's gonna really need real, true congressional oversight, and it's gonna really need people that have the experience in being able to do that. And with that segue of saying that, I'm so grateful to announce to the public that the Next Generation Action Network is going to endorse Collin Allred for the Texas 33rd Congressional District in this runoff election. And we hope that you win and be able to do all of the great work that we know you can do. My pastor, Frederick D. Haynes III, has endorsed your race too as well. And of course, this is about the moment we are in. The Next Generation Action Network has been on the front lines across this country for the last decade. And we know a fighter when we see it. We know substance when we see it. And right now, the status quo will not work in this current climate, right? We need real, true fighters and people who have a resume of being able to do that. And our organization feel like it's best that Collin Allred represents the 33rd Congressional District here in Texas. And we hope that in this runoff election, of course, early voting start May 18th through the 22nd. Election day is May 26th. And we hope that you get out and actually go and vote for Collin Allred. And of course, you'll see the Next Generation Action Network at the polls with our sleigh cards, making sure that you support the ticket. Collin, thank you for coming and sitting with me, man. Listen, we got a lot of work, y'all.
Yeah, we got to go.
We got to get out and vote. Let's do it. Let's make it happen, man. Thank you for coming.